Happy Thursday afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this segment of Tech Beat, where leaders learn, innovate, and grow. I'm super excited to have my esteemed friend and guest, Tanner Bell, co-founder and CEO of Ragnar, here with us today. Before I get to Tanner and his official intro, I did just want to quickly do a couple of announcements. First off, my name is Earl Foote. I am founder, CEO of Nexus IT. We are a 24-year-old outsourced white glove IT support and services firm with an intense focus on cybersecurity and compliance, based here in northern Utah and servicing a nationwide footprint. Quickly, this podcast Tech Beat is now available on all major podcast platforms, on Spotify, iHeart, Google, Pandora, Apple, and more. Go connect to us, subscribe, and listen on whatever platform you use for podcasts. We'd love your support, and certainly by subscribing, you're able to listen to these episodes or watch them from the comfort of your car or home or wherever you might be, the gym, whatever it might be. We'd love your support. Go subscribe. Quickly, I did want to mention as well that we will have some Q&A session here going on throughout the hour and at the end of the hour. So make sure that whatever platform you're joining us from, that you're typing in your questions. Tanner and I will do our best to keep an eye on those and get to them as they're relevant, or at the end of the hour here. I also wanted to let everybody know upcoming guests that are going to be joining me in the coming months here on Tech Beat. We've got one heck of a lineup here for 2022. Mindy Young and Nikki Walker are joining me this month. We're going to do a session on DEI. Mindy Young is managing director over at Equality Utah, and Nikki Walker is director of DEI at Domo. I've got my friend Levi Lindsay coming up next week. Levi and I are going to talk about his project, We Are Mind, and the event that they're putting on next week. Scott Paul, Mr. Know-It-All about Web3 and the metaverse and crypto and all that kind of stuff, is going to join me here in the next couple of months. Giselle Namadi, the founder of ILO. Giselle's got a really cool, interesting story. My buddy Bassam Salem, he is CEO, founder of Atlas RTX, a chatbot engine tech company, super cool solution and company. Johnny Hanna, CEO, co-founder of Homey, will be joining me. Tim Cooley, who he wears a lot of different hats, but he is executive director of Park City Angels. Tim is in fact, he literally wrote the book called Pitch Book. He's a total expert on everything about pitching and raising capital. So he's going to come on and help us understand a little bit more about that in a few months. James Jensen, founder at Jump, will also be joining me. He's also the creator of The Void, if you're familiar with that. We also have Garrett Clark and John Bowers from Silicon Slopes joining me in the coming months. So super excited about all that. Make sure you stay tuned for announcements on those segments and tune in for those. So let's get to the man of the hour here. Tanner Bell co-founded Ragnar in 2004 as a single overnight running relay race with 262 participants. Today, more than 100,000 runners participate annually in 6 road relay races and 20 trail relay races. Tanner has been instrumental in the growth of Ragnar and continues to play an integral role in establishing Ragnar as one of the premier brands in endurance sports. Tanner played a major role in raising several rounds of growth capital from Dolphin Capital Group, between 2006 and 2011, and White Road Investments, which is Clif Bar, and Partnership Capital Growth in 2013. Ragnar was recently acquired by FitLab, and Tanner will continue as CEO of Ragnar and GM of events at FitLab. So give me one moment to get, hey, Tanner, welcome, man. Happy Thursday afternoon.
Hey, yeah, excited to be here. You got a great lineup coming up. I don't know that I belong, but I'm stoked to be with you today.
Oh, are you kidding me? You're a legend, man. You're a legend. um, the pleasure is totally mine to have you here with us today. So, Tanner, a lot of exciting things going on right now for you and your team. Some big shifts, some big changes. But let's before we talk about those things, let's maybe go all the way back to the origin of not only Ragnar but you as an individual. Tell the audience a little bit about where and how you grow up. How you ended up with this crazy idea. Really, being one of the very first endurance sports kind of event, companies, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah. Happy to give you the dark and stormy night pitch. But I grew up mostly in Utah. There were about 6 years, where 5 years where I grew up in Las Vegas for a time. But most of my life, I've grown up in Salt Lake City area. And growing up, my grandfather was an entrepreneur. He owned a company called Bell Janitorial supply store that's still quite big now in the U.S. and I think Nevada and Idaho as well. So I remember working, for free, just kind of for fun on the weekends every once in a while as a stock boy or just running errands for him when I was a kid. So love that opportunity. And my dad always joked that entrepreneurship skips generations because the first generation after the entrepreneur sees how hard it is, and the second generation of the entrepreneur sees the fruits of their labor. So he always jokes that I had the entrepreneurial bug from because I was the second generation of Belco Janitorial. Um, so that was kind of how I grew up. And then, early on in college or early on in even junior high, my first job was stuffing envelopes, putting people's medical bills in envelopes for my friend's parents' company. It was a medical billing company, and they had started out of their basement. And so I was getting paid to basically lick envelopes and stamps and put the bills in the envelopes, right? Um, but I think those were two really formative experiences. That was probably eighth or ninth grade, and those two experiences of being that connected and that close to entrepreneurship, and seeing the benefits, the ups and downs, the opportunities, and the challenges. I think from there I always just kind of knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So through high school, I started excuse me. In high school, I started a small volleyball retail business with actually my co-founder at Ragnar. We grew up together. We were in high school together. His name is Dan Hill, and we started a small volleyball apparel business because we thought, hey, we loved playing volleyball, and there was nowhere to get good volleyball apparel in Utah. Turns out that you need people to play volleyball to sell volleyball equipment. So we borrowed some money from our dads, and very quickly had a lot of inventory on hand and didn't know what to do with that. So our first foray into events, was really because we had to figure out how to sell the inventory that was sitting in our closets because we owed our dad some money. So we put on a regional high school outdoor volleyball tournament, got a bunch of kids to come play and pay to play, and then we gave them all of our leftover equipment as prizes for that event. So really fun deal. And then I went to BYU for college. And while we were at BYU, the same friend, Dan Hill, he and his father was from Oregon, and he had run a race in Oregon called the Hood to Coast, which is kind of it is the OG of these overnight running road relay races. And his dad, Steve, had started running it in the 80s, and Dan had run it a few times. And we were looking at getting real jobs, getting close to graduating from BYU. And Dan came to me and said, "Hey, listen, my dad, I've heard him talking about this race for years and years. And so in college, we finally decided that we were going to try to put one on." So yeah, the first year was so that, I guess that takes me from kind of my upbringing into kind of how we started Ragnar, but that's ultimately how we got into the point where we decided to start Ragnar. So it was a really great. I would say I had a lot of really great entrepreneurial examples, whether it be my grandpa or working for this billing company called Med, that just kind of set me up for the desire to be an entrepreneur. So
Super cool, man. Super cool.
yeah,
So much great stuff there. The interesting thing is that entrepreneurship skipped a generation in my family as well. My mom's dad was an entrepreneur, owned for a long time motorhome, or not motorhome, but what do I want to call RV lots. In fact, the big lot that is Motorsports Land on State Street now, in Salt Lake, that was my,
oh
my
yeah,
grandpa's lot way back in the day. But by the time, I remember as a small kid going there, and he had sold that, I think, by the time I was probably 8 or 10 at the oldest. Certainly my mom was very risk averse. I think, it was, yeah, kind of like your dad. They see the pains of entrepreneurship, right? And how
yeah,
challenging and difficult, and the commitment that it is, and maybe decide to go a different path. And I got the bug from a young age myself too. Maybe just too foolish to know better at the time, but I'm glad I
yeah.
made the decision that I did. So, Tanner, tell us a little bit more, about how the idea for Ragnar came up, and then how you really kind of got started in this space.
Growing up in high school about this crazy race that Dan and his dad Steve had done. Like I said, called Hood to Coast. And so in junior high, oh boy, in college, as we were looking at what the next opportunity was, or looking at getting real jobs, I was about to graduate and get a job with PricewaterhouseCoopers, and he was also looking to graduate. And we thought that we he told me about Hood to Coast, and I thought, man, I wasn't really a runner at the time, but I thought this would really get me to. This was kind of like a running party, and this would get me to run and keep me in shape and whatnot. And so he was kind of the runner, and I liked throwing parties in high school. I thought, all right, let's see how this goes. And the format's very unique. The first race we did was here in Utah, from Logan to Park City, along the backside of the Wasatch Mountains, and it's 12 people on a team. Each person runs 3 legs, and each leg is roughly 5 miles. So it takes about 20 to 30 hours to finish. And you run your first leg during the day, and then you hand off to your teammate, and then your other teammates run. And then you run your next leg at night, and then you hand off your baton to the next teammate, and then the other 11 teammates run. And then you run your next leg the next morning on a Saturday, and then you all finish together. And so it's this wild overnight running adventure that is a pretty amazing concept. So in 2003, we really in earnest started working on this running relay concept, and initially called it the Wasatch Back Relay. And the first year was 262 runners. It was incredibly small. We didn't charge a whole lot for it. It was just, we just thought, okay, let's put this on, kind of do it as a test, and see if we can get something going. And it was so small that we ended up not even getting permits that year. It was just a wild deal. Um, so if you think about it, 262 people, but it's teams of 12. So you only have 26 teams. So you only really have 26 people running at every about once every. Well, you only have 26 people running at a time. So spread over 200 miles, people hardly knew the race even existed. But what was cool was at the finish line. When we got to the finish line, it ended up being, we were a little bit worried about how the experience was. And, we certainly had some hiccups because it was our first year and we had a kind of bootstrap staff. And we got to the finish line and we just knew something magical had happened. People were so excited. They had just kind of destroyed themselves running this 200-mile course with little to no sleep. And they were already talking about coming back next year. So the next year, we went from 262 runners to 1,000 runners, and then I think we doubled in size the next year and tripled in size the next year. And throughout that process, but right before we left BYU, we entered the Entrepreneur of the Year contest and took second place actually that year, but took second place um, to J Dogs, if you know the hot dog company here in Utah. And J Dogs, sorry, and through that experience, we ended up meeting a mentor. One of our mentors in that process wanted to invest. His name was Eric Jacobson, and so he happened to be maybe the only person that would be interested in investing in us in the time. We were just young college kids, and we were kind of looking at it as when we started it, we thought maybe it would be a great way to get into MBA school, a good project. But he really believed in us and believed in the concept. And so he put some early money in. He ended up forming Dolphin Capital, which went on to do several rounds of investment after that. And and when he came on, we decided that we had had enough success with the Wasatch Back that we could launch into multiple national series or to a national series. So we came up with the brand. We worked with a marketing company called Ragnar, or sorry, we worked with a marketing agency, a branding agency that helped us come up with the name Ragnar, which is a whole story unto itself. Um, and and then we started to launch a few more races. So I think in 2008 we launched 3 or 4 more races, and then from there they just kind of caught on like wildfire, and we continued to grow them. And then about 10 years we launched a series of trail relay races. So there's a trail relay that we do now that is it's a loop, a format. So instead of like a point to point like our road races, the trail relay race is 8 people on a team. And there are 3 loops that start and end in a central village. Think of a clover leaf format. And then in the village, you've got people camp. We have bonfires, s'mores, live music, food, and it's just kind of this wild overnight. It's kind of like I don't know, Woodstock meets trail running, essentially. So we launched that about 10 years ago, and those have been kind of our bread and butter since then. So it's been an amazing ride, really.
Man, so many, such a cool story, really, and taking kind of this harebrained idea from your youth and from your college years, and turning it into a viable business, and really a brand that's recognized not only nationally but internationally. I've lived in Park City since '04. And
Yeah,
I remember, like every year, I've never run one. I'll be honest, endurance
that's all
sports have
right. All right, we'll
never been
forgive
my
you.
thing. But I remember every year going past, on 248 there, past the school grounds, and seeing all of the runners coming in, and finishing up their race, and all the enthusiasm, and seeing the vans of people around town, trying to sleep in the vans, while their teammates are running, and all that kind of stuff. It's been cool to witness all that from afar. Is what I'm saying. Funny enough, my kid's on here live with us right now. Isaac, and in fact, he made a comment, said battle of the beards. But
Yeah, that's right.
yeah,
You're
you
winning for sure.
you've got the darker one. I wish I had a darker beard, honestly. They just look better. But anyways, man, what a cool story, and the journey that you've had here, to take this little idea and from one small, race, really blow up into this brand that endurance athletes worldwide look to. And I know that people travel, extensive distances, or halfway around the world to just come run one of these and be part of the experience. And obviously the trail runs, the festival idea, just kicks it up a whole nother notch and makes it super cool, right? Um,
Yeah,
so, congrats on certainly, having a cool idea and then really bringing that to fruition, and creating significant traction and momentum out of it. So, let's go kind of to the next leg of the journey here, Tanner. So, you've built this dynasty of an in-person, endurance sport events company. Suddenly, March 2020 rolls around, and COVID becomes a thing in the US, and lockdowns happen, and in-person events are no longer a possibility. So, tell us a little bit about that. Like, what were your initial reactions to, I would be like, holy shit, like my company's going to tank. What am I going to do here? Like this is our business. Like we have to get together in person. How do we pivot? How do we make this work? So tell us a little bit about your first thoughts and impressions, and then what you and your team decided to do.
I didn't ever think that the first 5 years of Ragnar, there could be anything harder than the first 5 years of Ragnar. But COVID certainly put that theory to the test. It was a really fascinating time, right? I think at the time, I had the opportunity to live in England for a few years and take a step away from the business a little bit, and uh, and launch our international events, right? And so I was still in the business, I was still involved, but I was living in England and I was really working with our international partners and helping international partners deliver Ragnars in Europe. And so I came back in 2019, mid 2019, and then took over CEO in November of 2019. So we were probably 4 months before COVID hit. I took over, and any transition is difficult and unique, and has its own challenges from the old CEO to the new one. And so, for me to take over 4 months before, I felt like over those 3 or 4 months, we had really kind of put all the pieces in together to be successful. Right? Um, we had kind of pulled I had put together my team. I had kind of hired the people around me that I wanted on board. And then right as we were really hitting our stride and actually moved into a brand new office space, which was really exciting. And then right as we moved into our offices, we moved in on a Monday, and then literally moved out of our brand new office space that next Friday. So we were in our brand new office for about 5 days, and it got real quick. We're a mass participation sport. We're mass participation events, and so certainly there are a lot of companies that did really well, and COVID was a boom. That was not the case for us. So we very quickly realized that we had, thousands of registrations, thousands of people signed up for races in 2020, and realized we weren't going to be able to deliver on those races, that we were going to have to cancel those races. And ultimately, what it was I say this a little bit jokingly, but for the year, for most of 2020, we were illegal, right? We went from this mass participation became essentially illegal. And to give you a sense, the overwhelming majority of our revenue comes from registrations, people signing up, paying us to come run our events, right? So I would say that 70%, 80% of our registration is registration fees. And then the rest comes from partnerships like sponsorship fees, and then and then merchandise. So we recognized very quickly that we were to make it through this pandemic. We weren't going to be putting on races anytime soon, and so within 2 weeks, maybe a week, we had to lay off half our staff, and that was probably one of the most difficult days I've had professionally. Just brutal, right? Brutal, brutal. Nothing that you ever want to do. Nothing that we saw coming. It was hard to know, hard to see that that was the case. And then to be able to have to make that decision within a week, and lay off half our staff. And I think even then I was being a little bit rosy, because about a week later, we ended up having to furlough another quarter of our staff as we continued to get more realistic. As you remember, early in the pandemic, right? It was like we were like, oh, maybe we'll be back in 3 months, and as things started to get more real, we realized that it was going to be a lot longer than that. So we went down from 60 employees to 12 in a matter of 3 weeks. And the challenge for us was that we still had work for 60 people, but we had 12 people on staff, right? We were just scrambling to, think about canceling all the races and providing, coming up with the policies for, providing deferrals, and everything that goes into not letting the participants know, the permits know, the cities and counties, everything. Just it was a lot of work, and it was a lot of work for a few people. And I guess a couple of things that came out of that, that are really important to me. One is that, the team that I had around me, I mean, they got the company through, right? I feel like I was a very small wheel in that cog. I think that the people loved Ragnar. They were dedicated to Ragnar. They were driving, and they just kind of bucked up and made it happen. And I had bad days, right? I had difficult days. They had difficult days. And there were days when I was down and they were up, and they were pulling me up. And as a leader, I don't think I showed it that often. But at that time, it was hard not to show. Everybody knew that we were going through some hard stuff, right? Um, but that team really just did an incredible job. So, I mean, one of the things I learned for sure is your team is everything. The people that you have around you are what going to get you through the hard times. And certainly, one leader, one person, I could never have done that on my own. So they deserve all the credit. So that was probably one of the, as I look back, that was one of the lessons that I learned the most, and very immediate too. That those people rallied around me and rallied around the company. And also, I found that, there was so much going on that for the first month, we felt like we were just scrambling, right? It was like, oh, we gotta do this and we gotta do that. And there was a point where we as a team sat down and said, okay, listen, we got to get back to some sort of semblance of efficiency. We've kind of wrapped up everything that we're doing with the races. We know we're not putting on the races this year. How do we get through this year? What are the things that we can do to, generate whatever revenue possible to get through this year? And it really came down to, we shifted to a virtual race model. And so instead of doing in-person races, we really ramped up the technology side of our business and started doing virtual events. And then the other pivot we made that I wouldn't necessarily say is a pivot, but was a really strong, provider for us was merchandise. We happened to buy all of our merchandise early in the year, very early in the year, and so we had enough merchandise sitting in our warehouse to basically last us 365 days. And so we got much better. Typically, our sales are race day, and so we got a lot smarter about e-com and how we sell our brand and sell our gear through e-commerce. And a huge credit to our participants too, who really stuck with us through those challenging times and recognized that that they recognized the needs and bought hoodies and sweatshirts and masks and everything that we had to do. So, but yeah, it was crazy, man. I mean, our revenue went from we were our 2020 revenue was 10% of our 2019 revenue. So we took a 90% dive in revenue from year to year. And we had some really sort of lean times. And like I said, the team just really rallied, and we started to look at putting on events the next year. So the virtual events got us through, the merchandise got us through, a lot of sacrifices from the team got us through. And then, early kind of mid 2020, we started looking and reading the landscape and started to put together, thought we'd be able to start putting on races in 2021. And yeah, I'm proud to say we're probably one of the first running events that got out and launched events in 2021. And a few of those were canceled early on, but certainly we were kind of leading the pack in, driving COVID policies, driving safety, putting our policies in place and enforcing those policies to keep people safe. And I think we were a big part of helping the industry come back as strong as we did last year in 2021. So we certainly had a strong rebound, but we're also not there. You don't go from illegal in 2020 to back up to 100% in 2021 and 2022. But super stoked about where we're at today. Last year, we ended up being a lot stronger than we had anticipated. And then this year is looking to be even stronger than last. So, yeah, I think that's ultimately how we got through, and some of the mental gymnastics and pivots that we had to do to get there.
Wow, man. Talk about going through the ringer, right? And being placed in a situation where um, so much is out of your control, and you just have to adapt and figure out how to, live and make things happen, right? And how to keep some
Yeah,
people employed and keep the company afloat, because you could have easily buckled. So many did, particularly events, kinds of companies. They did, they buckled. I mean, certainly they applied for PPPs and EIDLs, and some of them survived, 8
yep,
or 9 or 12 months on that stuff, and just couldn't figure out a way to get back up and rolling. So, and to go, 1 year to the next and decrease your revenue by 90% and lay off 3/4 of your team, like, man,
yeah,
that's rough, right?
yeah.
That's
It was
really
crazy.
difficult.
I will say, I mean, one of the things I'm probably the proudest about is that we were able to bring back almost 100% of the people we furloughed within about probably was 6 months, maybe four. And then we were even able to bring back, recently been able to bring back a handful of people that we let go. So it's really been a family, right? Getting through that. I mean, we have had, some really amazing, dedicated people to help us get through those difficult times. So it's been good.
Talk about the refiner's fire, as a leader, like you stepping into that role just a few months, as CEO, just a few months before COVID hits, and this brand new office. And a week later, you're closing down the office and sending everybody home. Man, like
Yeah,
that had to be for you. I can imagine the emotional roller coaster, you had to go on, and how stressful and difficult and sad it oftentimes, and I know how I feel about our people, anytime somebody's displaced, in our team, like that hits me hard, and to have to make a decision to cut, 3/4 of your team loose. And fantastic to hear that you've been able to, bring back all your furloughed team members, and, some of those who you actually laid off, right? That's amazing. But what a story, man. What a story. So,
yeah,
um, tell us a little bit more. Well, and I guess I do want to talk about, what the company looks like now, and what your races look like now. But before that, I think the key lesson that you kind of expressed here that I want to hone in on just a little bit is that people matter. Like, and I think most modern business leaders get that. Like, I think that we've, for the most part in business, we've evolved beyond the point of being slave drivers, and realizing that human capital is your greatest asset in a business, right? Maybe just key in on that a little bit more, and tell us more about your journey and relationship, with that lesson.
we just out of necessity, we were short staffed, right? I found, I mean, last year we just out of necessity, we were short staffed, right? We getting through 2021 and the craziness that we had, um, and trying to recover from, a 90% decline in revenue in 2020. I asked a lot of our people, right? We were just short staffed, and it was a crazy year. Um, and so what I realized through that was that people, our team really gave it, right? Our team really drove and made that happen. And it was an incredible thing to see our people really dig in and sacrifice and commit to the business, right? And it just reminded me that one of the culture that we had built, right? But two, that as an employer, we need to do that to them for them, right? We also need to be there. They were there for Ragnar, right? They were there for Ragnar in its time of need. They buckled down. They did the hard things, um, when they didn't have to, right? Nothing's keeping them there other than their loyalty and their desire, their loyalty to Ragnar and their desire to deliver great events because it changes people's lives. And so I feel like I came out of that a little bit wiser about, about the level of investment that we need to make in our people, right? I think people invest in the company every day. Maybe we're not going through a pandemic, but they're still investing and every day. And I think that investment into our people has it. I I would say that it opened my eyes. I don't want to say that we didn't invest in people before, but it was amazing to see people really drive. And I've really kind of arrived at that epiphany that the more we can invest in people, the better the company is going to be. Right? It does feel like that's where it starts. And I think we've done an okay job pre-pandemic, but I've realized through that process that we could have done a whole lot more.
Yeah, fantastic lessons, man. You know, uh, for me, there's a couple things that really stand out, and one of those is that people don't commit to a vision in an organization, particularly to work, if it's not for really great leadership and great culture, right? If you're a jerk as a leader, your people would have left you. Like even though
Yeah,
you were in dire straits, and if the culture was toxic and trash, right? And they didn't get along with their teammates, and they don't get along with their leaders, right? Um, and we saw so much of that happen, and still throughout 2021, the Great Resignation, which I don't know, that term pisses me off, but
yeah,
anyways, people would have left. They would have gone other places, and they would have thought that they see the writing on the wall that we're just this is a slippery slope, and we're not going to find our way back out of this, and my job's going to end here at some point, so I'm just going to step away, right? But so I think what I'm saying here is for those leaders and entrepreneurs that are tuned in, you've got to stay in tune with your people. You've got to they have to matter to you. You have to have a high care factor, and you've talked about here, Tanner, about investing in people, right? That's one of the biggest shifts we've had over the last decade, and what's really created significant ROI, for us is to care enough about them to really help them create promising career tracks within the organization, and not only that, but understand where they're trying to go personally in their lives, and then how we support those and how we coach them through that process, and how we create financial mechanisms by which we can help them achieve their goals, right?
yeah,
And so that's all, I think, just super important parts of modern business and modern leadership. You know uh, Humanity's evolved. Nobody wants to be part of something that they don't feel invested in anymore, and they don't feel rewarded and fulfilled and appreciated, right? So
yeah,
cool lessons for you to share there. I really appreciate it, man.
yeah,
uh, so let's talk a little bit now. Some big news in the last few weeks here for Ragnar. You're on the cusp of recovering, here from COVID, and starting to ramp back up, to full capacity of races and all that kind of stuff. And you are now, you've been acquired by FitLabs, which, by the way, so the audience knows, Tanner is staying. And I know I read that in your bio, but you're staying as CEO of Ragnar and taking on a role within FitLabs, as well as managing director of events. Um, so maybe let's go back first of all to were you expecting to do something like this? Was this something that kind of came out of the blue, or were you looking to for a strategic partner to help take the business to the next level?
As we started to see the market come back in 2019, or sorry, in 2021, early 2021, the market started to come back. And I have a pretty strong belief that there will be a return to endurance sports, kind of a post-COVID boom, is what I call it. And I wanted to make sure that Ragnar was set up for success coming out of COVID, that we could make the investments that we needed to make, and into our people, into our infrastructure, into our events, and really into our R&D, right? And a lot of what I had set out to do when I took over as CEO back in 2019 was to build something larger than an event company, to build a platform around events. And um, and so we started to do that even before COVID. We had really started to make some inroads into virtual event development, and started to think about how can these events build sort of a broader platform, right? Whether that is a merchandise platform, whether that is a virtual event platform, a tech platform, a training platform. How can we build into something broader than that? And certainly COVID put a hold on that. And then in addition, we need to be launching new events, right? We have Ragnarians that love the brand, but after running whatever race for 10 years, they're ready for something new. And so because COVID put a pause on that, in early 2021, I really felt like there would be a post-COVID endurance sports running boom. So I felt like we needed to go out and raise money to prepare for that and be prepared to start investing and sort of ride that wave when it came. Um, and so I went out to started to talk to different investors, and different funding sources. Essentially, we kind of talked to a little bit of everything: strategic partners, PE groups, kind of everything across the board. And we ended up starting conversations with this group, FitLab, who we actually met through one of our board members. And FitLab had already built a platform. So FitLab, when you think of FitLab, or their expertise is really in studio fitness. So you think your Orange Theory, your F45, your CrossFit, studio fitness, is one of their expertises. Their other expertise is fitness apps. So they own a handful of fitness apps like Fit Plan, and they have partnerships with Freeletics. And so they come to from their other worlds. They come with a lot of expertise in those two areas. And their vision is that in the long run, athletes are going to be looking for an opportunity to work out of the gym if they want to, work out from home, and then also be doing events. Be doing events for uh, that tie into that whole kind of ecosystem. So you've got your gym community experience, you've got your personal at home experience, and then you've got kind of the culmination of all that in an event. And what they didn't have at the time was an event platform. So they were looking for an event company that could come in with expertise, that had a great event brand, but could also help build other events under their app or under their other brands. And so it was really wonderful because we were looking to raise money to build a broader platform under Ragnar. We recognized that they already had a platform and they were looking for an event and experience and uh, expertise in the event world. Um, and so what started really as kind of a raising additional capital to be prepared for that next step turned into an acquisition conversation. And so that's ultimately how it happened. It's been an incredible. We've been with FitLab for 5 months now, and really, really excited about the future. So we are working on what I would call FitLab events under their other brands. So they're launching um, uh, two fitness studios with some celebrities that also they have at-home apps, and we're building out those events. And I wish I could tell you about them because they are wicked cool. But certainly in the next, within 3 to 5 months, we're going to be launching some really exciting events that are not Ragnar branded, but are under the FitLab portfolio of brands. So that's one part of it. And then the other part is that Ragnar then will also start to build out that Ragnar platform. So they, with their expertise in fitness apps, we will get much more involved in training and fitness and at home training for your Ragnar events. Um, and then eventually, I even think it's possible that we would see a Ragnar training gym of some sort in the future. So it's kind of like they're going this way, right? They're going downstream with studios, apps, and then events. And we've got events, so we're going upstream with apps and potentially a studio in the future. So it's a really, really cool concept. I think that's one of the things that I've seen about event companies over time, is that events that have kind of a broader platform and don't just and aren't just an event company only, have maybe a bit more longevity and success. A really good example is Davis Smith and Cotopaxi, right? They launched Cotopaxi. When they launched Cotopaxi, a big part of their launch was centered around Questivals, which was this really cool event, kind of scavenger hunt that they did. And but I always thought it was interesting because they were an apparel company with events. Ragnar is an event company with apparel. And so I think that our goal is to really make that transition, not to an apparel company, but to a broader supported Ragnar platform with FitLab. So super excited about what that's going to look like.
Man, so it sounds like this is kind of the perfect partnership, really to kind of solidify offerings and a holistic sort of ecosystem, for not only Ragnar, but for FitLab as well. It sounds like you found the perfect marriage here that, should ensure, a very healthy future for both organizations. That's super cool. Quickly, I just wanted to mention to the audience, and by the way, thanks, for joining us here today, everybody. We appreciate the comments. A lot of cool comments happening in the platforms that you're joining us from here. If you have any final questions you want to ask Tanner, feel free to throw those, in the comment section of the platforms you're joining us from. And we'll try to get to those here. But so Tanner, maybe a couple of really, standouts to me there. First of all, I had no idea you called them Ragnarians. That's super cool. I learned something new there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you've displayed a couple of really important pieces, I think, here of leadership and entrepreneurship, with this last little segment that we've talked about. Um, and those are number one, as a leader, particularly as a CEO. But you've got to look around the corners, right? You've got to be trying to understand and predict what the future of your industry might be, and particularly, where possible, gathering data on that, so that you can make decisions about where to steer your company and where to go in the future, right? So on point of you to understand, or kind of look through those future glasses and say, okay, people are going to be starved, and we've seen that already. Like, when events start to come back, concerts, or just like getting out and doing things, like everybody's starved for some social interaction. Everybody's starved for getting back to some normalcy, right? And so super keen of you to hone in on that and go, okay, like we need to ramp up and be ready. And right now, as we've laid off a bunch of people and revenue's been low, like if that wave hits us, we're not going to be able to ride it, right? We're going to be left in the dust. And so to go out and get some capital, formulate a relationship, broker an acquisition that set you and your team up for, long-term success. Just kudos on, future vision there. Totally. And then to also understand the need and the importance of kind of diversity in your own portfolio, right? If you're an events only company, and that's probably what, a lot of the events companies that withered and went away during COVID, unfortunately, they they didn't do these exercises you did to kind of say, how do we create a more compelling offering that has more touch points, and how do we create more revenue streams? And how do we create a more holistic sort of ecosystem here that our that our loyalists can engage with and all that kind of stuff, right? So just super cool to hear about your journey and how you've thought about this and built it. Um so let's see. Stephen Ander here asks, do any other Ragnarians mark off kills when driving? Oh, let's see, sorry, some of these just came flowing in here fast. When driving and you pass someone with a Ragnar sticker. So do any other Ragnarians mark off kills when driving and you pass someone with a
Yeah,
Ragnar sticker?
this is kind of a Ragnar culture thing that's fun. So when you're running in the event, if you pass somebody, the participants have taken to calling that a kill. So if you run a 5 mile leg and you pass 10 people, you get to the van and you mark off your kills. And yes, that happens all across the nation. We don't officially promote it. It's just I don't know that we officially say like, yeah, we want to be calling it kills, but we're totally fine with the community doing whatever they want with that. So that is all across the nation, every race, you'll see bands that have, the names of the teammates and then how many kills they had on each leg. Is pretty awesome. So that's a fun one.
Yeah, those cool little cultural things that that form, particularly, you have a following that I would call, zombie loyalist, and I know that that's based on a book, right? But you have this cult following, that are Ragnarians that they build and formulate their own culture that then becomes a cool part of your ecosystem, right? So marking off kills, I've seen those
Yeah.
hashes on the
And
vans, but I
I
had no idea what
think
they meant.
I think Steven's actually saying, do other people he's saying when I'm driving and I see a sticker, do they also mark a kill? Please don't do that because you're driving. But I don't know, Steven. You might be a special animal on that one because I don't know if people when I think he's saying when he drives his car past other people with Ragnar
He's
stickers, he counts it as a kill. I've
he's
never heard
racing on
that,
I-15. That's what he's
but good
doing.
for you, buddy. Good for you.
Yeah, he's doing the old thing, pulling up next to the guy with the Ragnar sticker at the stoplight, right, and revving the engine.
Yeah.
Like, all right, let's
Yeah.
go.
Tick mark. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Steven, drive safe, buddy.
Yeah, that's
Don't be
right.
getting in any accidents out there.
Yep.
Andres Tovo has a question here. Probably not a really easy question to answer, but maybe you got some thoughts on it. He says, I'm a student at Ensign College this semester. We have the possibility to participate in an entrepreneur competency. Um, in your experience, what is going to be a good business idea that can help people in Utah? Um, any thoughts there, Tanner? I know that's very general and very out there.
Anything that saves water is what I would be thinking about. That's and I say that seriously. Like if there is anything we can do to save water, it seems like we are in dire straits right now in Utah. And I would say any business idea that that promotes less water use. I mean, what was that? There's that new idea. I forget what it's called, but like flip the strip, right? And you don't have grass on your strip, and that saves so much. Um, I think any ideas like that, artificial turf, I think there's something that's going to be a real need in Utah in the future. I know that's out of left field, but Andre's question was out of left field, so that's my thought.
Yeah. I did not expect that, but that's very smart. Certainly, and this winter
Yeah,
has not helped. I'm concerned what summer's going to look like because
yeah,
we've had very little snow. As a guy who likes to ski, and lives, next to 3 world-class ski resorts, there's not been a lot of good skiing this year. It's been a lot of
no,
a lot of rocks. You take out the old skis because you're scraping the bottom out, on them and stuff because it's just very little
Yep.
snow this year.
Yep.
We're definitely looking like a rough summer. So there you go, Andres. Figure out how to save, conserve, and maybe create water. For
Yeah.
Utah's long term future. Yeah. So Tanner, we're kind of winding down on the hour here. I want to respect your time and the audience time. With a couple minutes left, do you have any final thoughts on your journey or some of the bigger lessons you've learned, that you think would be valuable for other entrepreneurs and leaders?
I think the one just that has kind of centered around this conversation, and actually the way you and I met was a kind of collaborative leadership, kind of mental health session where we were just getting together to kind of help each other out and support each other, and like how do we make it through these things. And so I would say, that's kind of one of the big things is everybody. I think we've learned a lot about mental health going through the pandemic, and so I would just encourage us all to stay close to our loved ones, reach out to people that are going through it. We're all going through challenging times, even as we hopefully are coming out of COVID. It doesn't change the fact that there's a lot of challenges out there. And, I think that's where I value this community, the business community, the ownership community the most is in those relationships that have supported me through the challenging times. And hopefully I've been able to support them. On the same hand, I think my other message is, I'm really optimistic about the future. I think, I spoke at a session for our running industry conference, and they asked what's next, and I said, listen, the good thing is, if we've made it through this, it feels like we can make it through anything, right? Like what can't we do? And that's an industry that probably on average dropped, like I said, by 90% from what year one to year two. So I'm really excited about the future, and I think if we can just reach out to each other and support each other as we go through rebuilding, and not everybody's rebuilding, so supporting success and cheering for each other. That's kind of that's been honestly one of my big takeaways is just the friendship that you and I have created and the group of people that we've met with as we've gone through and kind of grapple with those challenges has been really inspiring. So
Yeah. I think it's super cool for us to begin to see a movement where mental health is no longer a stigma, and we all just own the fact that we all deal with some stuff, right? Like,
yeah,
and the reality is being a leader at the top is rarely an easy thing. Like there are you're doing massive hoops mental hoops every single day, like jumping through those hoops, and you're on a roller coaster all the time, super big highs, super big lows. Being a leader, you consistently doubt yourself. Like, so
yeah,
many people look at leaders and think, oh, they got it all figured out. And the
yeah,
reality is most of us, we're just figuring it out on the fly, just like everybody else, right? Um, and we have our own challenges to deal with, and so not only do leaders need to band together and help each other in that process, but we need to help our people as well. Mental health is real, and you know so many people struggle in so many different ways, and that's okay. Like, it's okay to not be okay. And if we can figure out ways to support each other, by all means, we absolutely should. And that's a fantastic segue, to kind of wrap this session up. So next Tuesday, my buddy Levi Lindsay will be on Tech Beat here with me. I should know the time off the top of my head, and I don't, but I think it's 10 a.m. It's either 10 a.m. or 12. But Levi and I are going to be talking about his We Are Mind initiative, and the event that they're producing the following day on the 23rd, supporting mental health. In fact, his organization, whatever donations that they raise off of their events, go directly 100% to providing free, mental health, resources to people who are in need for those. And so, super happy to have Levi on the show in a week here and support him in that process. Tanner, I want to thank you for joining me again today, buddy. Really appreciate you sharing your abundance and your story here, and helping everybody learn and grow in the process. This I think is such an important piece of creating a thriving ecosystem. And that's just, sharing our stories and the things we've learned. And so I appreciate you coming on the show and doing that with me today.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. It's been great to spend some time today.
Yeah, fantastic. So thank you for everybody that joined us here this hour. Tanner and I are going to sign off, but I'll see you again next Tuesday on the 22nd.